Hello, hola, buenos dias. We can do this panel in Spanglish, I think, no, with the combined language capabilities of this table. So welcome and thank you for joining, especially because I know another session at this time is something very catchy, like what university presidents don't want to tell you. I know if I wasn't moderating this, I'd probably be in that room. So, but we do have an interesting topic at hand. And when I was assigned this panel, immediately my father popped in my head. My father doesn't have a university education, by the way, but he always says, if you want to understand why something is, follow the money. Right? So really, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And when I think about AI and the possibilities, but also the challenges that are ahead of us, I think it's very important to focus on the money aspect, right? Because we need to think about what is funding the technology, who is behind the funding as well, and the decisions about budgets and where the money goes are going to be really important in terms of shaping the future that we all want to have. So again, thank you for coming, and we're just going to go around really quickly. Please be fast and introduce yourself. Name, what you do, no more than 30, 60 seconds.
Great.
Let's go.
Happy to be here. Morgan Battle, Managing Director of Tucker Capital. We are a strategic investment bank that's been around since 1982, and we focus on education exclusively, probably for the last 3.5 decades. It's a mix of strategic consulting and M&A advisory. We work with large systems like Southern New Hampshire University, National Geographic on strategic initiatives, and we work with emerging growth stage companies looking to find partners in the marketplace. So,
Hi, I'm Fernando Valenzuela from Mexico. I work in all of Latin America. I'm the CEO of a company called EdLatam Alliance, which is the largest open innovation network in the region, and we basically transform and build universities and schools from scratch and digital transformation.
Alexander Schindler. I'm currently a senior advisor for financial institutions and designing business strategies for those. Have been on the board of an asset management company in Germany, assigning basically 6 million clients on a global basis.
Eddie Lopez, founder of just a private investment firm, Columbus Avenue Investments, and I'm on the International Advisory Board for SEC, and we invest pretty much industry agnostic, but we have a lot of focus in healthcare and taking a look at using technology in education and AI. So,
hi, I'm Al Numan. I'm an entrepreneur by nature and a board member at New World International School, located in Muscat, Oman. Our vision and ambition for the school is to build a holistic learning approach, which isn't available at the country at the moment.
Okay, great. So this is interesting. It's a bit of a motley crew. We have an interesting mix of universities and K through 12, investors, M&A, the money people. So I think we'll get a variety of perspectives. Great. But starting with you, Morgan, because you work kind of across all of these people. What would you say that the smart investments are right now when it comes to AI? What are you seeing? Where's the money flowing?
yeah. Well, your dad was 100% right. Money follows energy and opportunity, and when you see it flowing in a certain direction, it's smart to pay attention to it. I think as it relates to AI, there's a big difference between smart money and passive opportunistic money. I think everybody doesn't want to miss the boat. So private equity, venture investors, they want to get involved in AI in some capacity. And I think entrepreneurs, if you don't have an answer to AI, or you're an incumbent and you don't have an answer to AI, you're going to be left behind. But I think ultimately the difference between the smart money and the passive opportunistic money are those that understand that there are not defined business models right now. There are not innovative strategies in investing that's going to change the game. It's around finding smart people, backing them, and being savvy enough to sit back and be flexible and to stay curious. And all the speakers this morning corroborated that. But it's around people who really understand that we are in this inflection point in AI. And as such, we need to let it develop a little bit. And the prognosticators, we never really listen to them. We certainly don't think of ourselves as prognosticators, but it's no different to what was going on when COVID set in. Everyone had their own opinions on how the future was going to play out. Most of those opinions did not end up being sound perspectives. So I think we have to be patient And the patient investors are looking to find really smart entrepreneurs and giving them the space and the time to figure it out and not apply undue pressure.
A lot of wisdom in there, I think. So how then, if you're an investor or if you're running an educational institution, you have to make an investment in AI, how do you separate the wheat from the chaff? How can you really tell that it's not just some AI plug-in that really you could do with open source ChatGPT? How do you determine that the AI is reliable? So one example that comes to mind was all of the investment in the world that went into the plagiarism detection tools, which then we discovered are really not that accurate and they have a lot of bias. And so you think about those two examples. One is when it's really just a bolt-on tech that's not deep IP, right? And there's nothing really there, or cases where it's just not good. So how do we make those decisions? Maybe I'll throw this one over to you, Eddie, because you're a serial entrepreneur.
That's a great question because, again, for us, especially, I think when you're an investor, you're either, at the level of like the Saudis with their sovereign wealth fund that are making a massive investment into AI, or you're kind of in that smaller, playground kind of where we are kind of, with these emerging technologies. And so it's really, really important for us because we can't drive and shape the market. So we have to be very smart about picking what's actually real or what's just, hey, somebody's able to throw something together and put on a good show based on the reaction. Again, everybody's like, oh, we don't want to miss the boat. This is a big, thing that we've got to address. And so we go out and try to get everybody excited about the money. And I think we're going to see a lot of things come and go, obviously, and that's part of the natural process. But for us, it's really about trying to get really good, reliable people, coming to things, events like this and learning more. It's just things about education, right? You need a broader base of understanding so you can evaluate things the right way. And like you were saying, just be a little more patient, right? Maybe that Apple approach, let somebody else, take the lead and then come back and, and do it better, faster, and smarter. But for us right now, we're just really relying on that balance between the experts, the so-called experts in the field, which, are being formed every day because it's evolving so much. And then balancing that out with, you still can't get away from, you need the right people running the company and have good operators and a good vision and those partnerships that you think can help make it successful. So
kind of what you're both saying is maybe the first mover advantage when it comes to investing in AI is overrated.
Yeah.
And from our perspective, we're telling a lot of our early stage companies to hold off on taking on investment for as long as they possibly can. To wait and let everything sort of settle down and then find the really good investors, the partners that are going to help you develop the asset.
So Fernando, you represent or work with a lot of institutions that are trying to transform digitally, right? And I'm guessing that making decisions about where to spend their money on technology is part of that. So what advice do you give them considering everything we've discussed so far?
Yeah, so I would say there's many dimensions to it. First, we're seeing that it's easier to build a new institution than to transform one that already exists, which is a significant challenge. So we're seeing flows of money from people that used to fund universities, used to help these universities, and now they're saying it's easier probably to build something new. The second element, and I would probably add this international dimension, has to be with the flow of talent. If you look at the amount and the density of engineers that are building artificial intelligence, data, all of that, you see a concentration in, certainly not in emerging markets. Certainly most of them are happening in English. So when you look at these dimensions in terms of where is the talent flowing, I think that is probably something that is not considered as important as the flow of capital, but I would say we need to look at the flow of talent as well, and the density and concentration of AI. You see, for example, I ran into a report that was looking at the amount of engineers that are leaving the financial segment, the IT people that used to work in banks, that now going to Google, Amazon, of these type of companies. So I would say that we need to look at the balance between, emerging markets, talent, capital, all together, because everybody's talking about artificial intelligence, but it's at the end is the talent that is building those, and with what type of approach they are building these models, and with what type of data. So if you look at how close you are to the US, to the UK, and so on, and the amount of benefit that you can get from AI is totally different when you look at it from, you know, Colombia or some of these other countries that don't have that amount of cultural proximity. So I think this is an additional dimension for us to be discussing.
Okay, wasn't expecting the conversation to go in that direction, but super interesting. So Naman, you run a school, right? So another group, stakeholder here. How are you thinking about, in terms of your budget and investment that you're making? Because there's a limited amount of money you can spend.
Exactly.
So how much are you willing to be flexible in terms of investing in AI, AI literacy, all of these things?
I mean, at the moment of time, if we're having a look at our OPEX structure, we're spending a lot of money, especially in our direct costs, which accumulates to 85% of our costs directly to the teachers themselves. While 25% of our indirect costs are related to marketing and admissions. I do agree with the fact that we should jump on board directly with the technology that's coming on board. But however, as we've heard about the talks earlier today, incremental investments would be the way forward to understanding a better utilization of such a structure. A lot of those AI tools that are available currently at the market enhances the students' experience within the school, not just the well-being. However, we look at the academic performance when we're looking at adaptive learning and tailor-made pathways to students. That wasn't the case when I used to be in schools. Those factors would come into determination in terms of having a higher retention rate for the students that already are in school, and would generate a lot of word of mouth that comes from those kids and their parents. So we could reduce the amount of money spent within admissions and marketing while putting that money onto incremental solutions that could come on board, improving the well-being of the students, the academic performance, as well as giving more time for the teachers to spend that physical time with the students instead of planning, scheduling, and grading. So we're willing to reduce sums on those high-end cost structures into the AI tools space.
Okay, that's definitely a very interesting use case is the back office, right? Not just the co-pilots and the personalization, but what it can do to free up that human availability of the teacher to be with the students. But I'm curious, how do you decide who to spend your money on? Because you've talked about the what, but to my previous question, how can you pick the solutions that are legitimate and that are good people behind them as well?
I mean, we're lucky enough to be in a lagging community back in Oman. We aren't very much we aren't willing to take risks with huge disruptive technologies. It gives us the time to set benchmarks and understand from the problems that other incumbents in the education industry had fallen into, so we can build our mitigations against those risks that are potentially probable to happen. So we aren't putting our eggs all on one basket in the AI sector. We're willing to wait and see how it develops before we take that initial steps towards investing in artificial intelligence.
So again, I suppose maybe patience is a virtue that we should be thinking about when it comes to AI here. Okay. So Alex, myself in my consultancy, I work with a lot of Global 500 companies like HSBC, Novartis, Google, Unilever, et cetera. And they're all scrambling to come up with a strategy for upskilling and reskilling their employees around AI. I don't spend a lot of time with higher ed and universities, and so this is interesting, right? And so you really hear in higher ed, they're all focusing on that, but maybe not thinking about industry so much. And I'm wondering, do you see a space for better collaboration between the skills and the talent that universities develop and what companies need, or possibly to even co-create this AI upskilling strategy?
Yeah, thank you. I think we can echo to some extent what Fernando said. There's a lack of, from my point of view, a lack of existing skills, both at the investor level as well as currently at the academic level. So there has to be more cooperation, and I think you're absolutely right in your assessment. And one can even prove in a way that in the financial industry you have, at least for the last 30, 40 years, quantitative methods in the investment process. And these methods running on algorithm and models, they have been developed either in-house by the large institutions or in cooperation with universities. Because usually within an investment organizations, you hardly have sufficient skills to really cope with the challenges. Another important issue which comes to my mind is the quality of the tools, as you have mentioned. I think we need skilled people who can basically judge on the quality of the different tools offered by third-party providers or in-house developed.
And who might those intermediaries be?
I mean, on one hand, I think universities, other than today, at least here on the European continent, could utilize their research to a much larger extent as they do today. That leads again to cooperation. You could even give mandates or contracts to universities to work on specific tasks on one hand, and on the other hand, like Eddie mentioned, I think we need intermediaries like, for example, your company, to identify those developers of AI tools that are worth investing to. I mean, we always have to accept in this early stage that out of 10, maybe 8 will go,
Right.
but the 2 you invest in might then generate the returns you expect.
Okay. Or maybe this sounds like a plug, I'm not getting paid, but maybe it's organizations like Titan or Tucker Capital, et cetera, that could potentially play that role, no? As
You
referees
will have
or
specialized
Yeah.
specialized players in this respect again. Yeah?
Okay.
Because companies
You're
like
welcome.
mine, we are tightly regulated. We can invest only into those stocks which are already listed on stock exchanges. So we come in very late. So what we do, we buy the Microsofts, Googles, Amazons, and others today. These 2 can invest in the early stages. And
can take
what
the
is
risk,
left,
right?
we take
Yeah.
over.
Right, exactly. Hopefully,
Okay.
yeah. Sorry.
So, no, go ahead.
No, I would say, yeah. I mean, I think part of investing in whether it's in this or when I'm looking at healthcare traditionally and education are 2. They are creatures of habit, right? They have their ways of doing things, thinking things. We know education is very fragmented in different theories on how to impart this knowledge and how to do it. But so what we would focus on is what are the AI technologies that seem to be applicable for maybe when you're starting a new school versus you're running one. Yeah, I mean, surely there's very transformative technology, but how many schools are ready to take that leap and go a totally different direction, with what AI can accomplish, whereas there could be things that are student experience, maybe making teachers more efficient so they can be more, facilitators versus just having to run a classroom, and more likely to, if you're going to place a bet on, getting in early, maybe some of those. And it's always that balance, right? Because where investment goes, that might ensure that that's the AI technology that becomes prominent and becomes sticky, and then if there's something better comes along, it's too hard to switch to it. So that's always the danger there, also is missing something else.
Fernando.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to complement is that we are seeing more and more that the boundaries that were traditionally between education, health, financing are beginning to blur.
Certainly
So-
education and healthcare.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So this did not happen 2 or 3 years ago. So you're starting to see how fintech, health tech, and edtech are becoming a solution. And when you look at it from an educational institution perspective, there's a number of elements that they are not able to break these boundaries still on. So they are still seeing, the faculties of health and the faculties of science and art totally different. So AI is beginning to connect these dots. The capital should flow on that. And the other element that I wanted to bring is the level of waste that happens in the education systems. So you waste time, you waste space, you waste information, and you waste human talent. So when you look at it and you put it through the AI eyes, if you connect healthcare, fintech, edtech, and you reduce waste, the level of return that is going to happen in the education segment is going to be maximized. So you're going to have return on time, you're going to have return on information, you're going to have return on investment, return on learning. So there's many other dimensions that are probably not as evident.
It makes me think, I don't know how many of you were listening to George Siemens, the last talk, about kind of the shift in this AI world that we're in now from to ontologies, right? And kind of relationships. And so silos are not our friends here. And so to think about how different, even areas of investment can be connected, I could potentially unlock a lot of opportunity. But thinking as well of new revenue streams, right? Because I know particularly universities are kind of scrambling right now, being disrupted. And it occurs to me, maybe you want to answer this, Alex, could potentially this partnership between universities and, say, industry or schools, et cetera, become a source of new income for universities?
As I said earlier, I definitely believe, and it has to be an important source of revenues for universities. I think you could even imagine that universities spin off certain capabilities and have investors participating, taking a share in those enterprises. I think that's definitely the road to go, and as it has been said by Fernando, I believe that in 10 years from now, the educational world will look totally different from today. I mean, at least the academic world.
Well, even, you think about AI and its potential, which really is kind of a reality now, to offer personalized learning at scale. Does that just mean that higher education, as we know it, is dead? Because having smaller campuses, it costs $100 grand a year, $100,000 in some cases. Now you can scale that, right? Much faster, cheaper. What are
I think we used to think that the size of a school was the number of chairs that they had, which is totally incorrect. So the use of physical space needs to be changed and needs to be optimized. But I think with AI, something new comes up, is that experience used to be the main asset that you had. Now you can solve problems without experience with AI. So that creates a different relationship between enterprise and schools. And the other thing that I think is going to create additional revenue flows, revenue streams, is going to be the fact that since AI cannot be regulated, it can only be filtered. It can be curated to you, so you can control sort of what we're doing here. We're putting an AI that is filtering on this event the level of content. All of these universities, all of the schools are going to have this regulator, this filter. And that, I think, is something that universities could develop for other universities, for schools, for the system. And so it's going to bring additional revenue flows, additional connection between research and deployment of AI to optimize this.
That's interesting. A Spanish expression comes to mind. So for those of you who speak Spanish, no se puede poner puertas al mar, no? And I think about the regulation, right? There's almost no way to put gates on the sea. You can't stop it from flowing. And so, but we have to do something about it, because if we don't know what the rules of engagement are, we don't know what our sandbox is, people aren't going to play with AI. So I think about companies right now, as I was saying, they're all scrambling. What are the rules? People either they ban AI, you can't use it, right? Employees aren't supposed to touch it, or it's a free-for-all and then they get in trouble, And so again, I think there really is a real opportunity for universities, for some of these independent experts to come in and play a role across the ecosystem. So one thing we talk a lot, we're talking about, the people who are buying the technology, the people that are investing in the technology, that are making the technology. What about the people, the learners that are using the technology? I would love to hear from you, Morgan, about this. Like, what do you think it means for them, and from a financial perspective, where are the opportunities?
Yeah. I think about it from both the learner and the teacher perspective, because all education is about learning. I think the reality is that AI is going to give and it's going to take away. And we've talked a lot about, certainly this morning, things that it's going to take away, what it's going to automate, what it's going to replace. But we've also talked about the things that it's going to give, which is time, as you mentioned, and the ability to create meaningful relationships. And I'm a little bit biased because my colleague is working with George Siemens, who we heard from this morning, on the initiative coming out of Southern New Hampshire that is called Human Systems, very much by design, because it is challenging us to think about how we are human now in a new world, where a lot of the things that we held in high regard, that we leverage as our own identity or expertise, are being sort of taken away or made redundant. So I think it's forcing the learner to be human, to engage in content in a more experiential way, for educators to relate and interact now that they have time in a more intense and engaged way. And I think opportunities that empower that. So investors are looking, from our perspective, to back entrepreneurs that are building systems that allow for the human flourishing to develop in a more accelerated way and a more authentic way. Not to oversimplify or even sort of refer back to this morning, but I think everything that we heard in the 3 hours this morning speaks to that element.
And what about the business to consumer opportunity? Do we even need the middleman of the university anymore? From an investment perspective, are you seeing anything interesting in that space?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's consistent with people claiming that the university system was dying 10 years ago and that the liberal arts colleges were going to go away. I think our perspective is you can never just replicate that relationship. And the communities that are developing, which we all thrive on, every single person at this table and in this room needs, I think the opportunities are still going to be there for higher ed to play a critical role in community building and the facilitation of relationships. So I don't see those models going away. I think some of the smaller universities will certainly struggle, but if you're an AI first university thinking forward about how to incorporate AI in a smart, ethical way, I think you can survive the wave and ultimately be patient, because things are going to settle down and there'll be norms that everyone sort of responds to.
So you don't think brick and mortar is dead?
No.
No? Fernando, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I would also agree. I think one of the elements that is happening is that we thought that we could solve this with one entrepreneur, one solution, one type of investment. And I think nothing that you can, let me put it like simplifying, nothing that you can buy a license for is solving a real problem. So you need a lot of...
Nothing you can buy a license for is solving a real problem.
So
Investors in the room?
So what I always tell investors to do is look at more systemic problem. It's more of a mergers, acquisitions, collaboration, open innovation that it would be in investing in the right entrepreneur or the right solution. So you need to look at it horizontally. And the other thing is what is happening right now, if you think about two axes, you have the human-led activities and the machine-led activities. And in those layers, you're going to have to think everything through the human eye to say, does this make sense that a human is doing that, or shall I relate that to a machine? And then what happens is you're going to replace a lot of functions, a lot of costs that are currently happening in the human activities that should not be happening anymore. And then you need to elevate the human activities as you elevate the machine. So that balance is just starting, and it's very complex. But when you look at it from the opportunities to maximize revenue streams, reduce costs, be more profitable, and solve bigger challenges, then that's when the discussion is going to become interesting.
And I'm going to throw this to you because I love your perspective, because you don't actually live and breathe education and tech, right?
Right.
Health tech
Right.
investor.
Right.
How do you see this? Would you be placing your bets on higher ed?
So I tend to think, I think it's even, I think there's higher ed definitely a focus, but I think it goes all the way back to, even primary. And because of like you said, the interconnectivity now and the blurring of those, the lines. And so I'm very involved in healthcare, and we are seeing that in fintech. What are those three things that touch everybody? It's healthcare, education, and finances, right? And if the benefit of using AI is to change a young student's mindset from just having to go to school, put his uniform on, take in knowledge, regurgitate it, to opening up the ability to be more creative and understand what it is to be human and what their purpose is, then I think I would focus my investments on what are the technologies that are encouraging that behavior. Because the time where you're going to just get a job, work at it for 40 years, retire with a pension, that's gone. All right, everybody's, so what is it to be human? We're so successful because we are adaptable, and we can live in any environment, and we've found a way to, overcome all kinds of obstacles, and that requires creativity, and a lot of that has been driven out with the traditional educational model, and we've seen these silos. So as we are now breaking down those walls, what are the technologies that are starting at a young age, creating those new minds? Because it's going to take a while, right? These industries are slow to change, but technology does accelerate. It puts that hockey stick on change, some for good and bad. So, but what are those technologies that are going to release that creativity to, as we transfer more things to machines, allow us to solve the real problems, right?
So you're bullish on early education, interventions, mental health.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where would you be placing your bets?
First of all, I hope that in general in the education system, students will have the chance in the future to get a broader base of knowledge than today, because I think over the last 20, 30 years, students have been in a way forced to be at a very early stage specialized on a particular field, and the worst case could be that you finish your studies and the jobs are gone. Right. Just a word on the human aspect, which has been discussed this morning. You mentioned it as well. I'm a bit concerned that if we get some spare time from the use of AI, that at least in aging societies, that space will be filled by increasing productivity of the individual. So meaning that the individual will have to work more or on different tasks. So I hope for the better, but I'm not sure. What we see right now, in particular for example, in Germany, in the mechanical engineering industry, is definitely a supplementing a lack of skills and personnel with AI.
Where would you be putting your money, or where are you advising your clients to put their money?
Mental health, for sure. Early childhood, 100%. You think about the kind of people that anyone here wants to hire. It's the kind of person that can come in, hold the room, speak to everybody differently based on immediate reads on who they are. That's emotional intelligence. Those are the soft skills that are really, really hard. Obviously, the hard skills are a lot easier because they can be more rapidly taught. The last time many of us are empowered to develop those soft skills are in early childhood education. And then the curriculum gets standardized, and all of a sudden we're on this sort of regimented path. But I think things that empower soft skills, early childhood education, mental health, technology-oriented curriculums, as much as I would want to resist that, it is a non-negotiable in the new world to be able to speak to AI, because that is the thing that's not going to go away. So we need to embrace it. So skill sets from a technology perspective that you can learn throughout your entire learning journey, I think, is going to be important, and good bets will be made in that area. So,
Fernando?
I was getting scared that you were going to look at me now.
You were hiding.
I was trying to hide. Yeah. I think. Yeah, please. I think this is not going to come from the traditional perspective. I was looking at the gaming industry. If Fortnite was a university, it would have 70 million students, and it would have 300 hours average use. So I think what is going to happen is a crossover between entertainment, health, education. I think we missed it on the engagement. I think we think that education should be boring, and I think that is going to change radically. So I see that it's coming from the outside. So, Uber would not be looked at it by the taxi drivers. I think education is not looking outside for this type of innovation, and that's where I see the combination between AI and other human endeavors that is going to transform us.
I think that's a great point, because when you're young, learning is fun, right? And then at some point, it becomes not fun because you don't get to be creative, but when you have these programs that can gamify learning, I've seen models where, you know, the children left to be independent, you know, you would think, you know, humans tend to be lazy and they won't, but they actually are more advanced than their peers that are in more traditional education because it's fun. And meanwhile, the AI realizes, oh, they need some more development here. They've mastered this skill. I don't need to keep repeating that over there. We need to have them work on this. But because it's fun, they do it voluntarily and they become more advanced. And then I think what you'll see is when they're older too, where do you invest? Where are people voting with their dollars, right? So if they are understanding, hey, this technology or this school is going to empower me to be able to adapt and be successful in different fields or whatever, or lifelong learning, I can come back and they've got an accelerated way because they know how I learn, and they've got programs for me to, you know, switch careers or do whatever. Those would be the technologies.
And I would even add to that. I mean, a lot of the growth stage companies that are getting a lot of traction in the marketplace that we're around are the game-based learning companies, and it's not just early childhood; it's K through 8. I think Fortnite is a really great example. It's banned in my house as of last week because it's just absolutely pervasive. But there's something.
And they actually follow that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a little bit of a resistance over the last
Once
week.
the kids are in the garden, they
Then you will teach them to become hackers.
Exactly.
Right.
Now,
They'll
there
find
are
a way.
times where I came in and my son was sort of sneaking in the corner. But if you take the principles of Fortnite, the engagement, and you actually use it for good from an educational perspective, which some assets are really doing right now, but I think those kinds of platforms hopefully are more.
I think you're right. What you said before, we missed the boat on engagement, though, 100%. But there are some, you know, there are outliers. Like I think of Duolingo. I think it's like a great learning experience. That it's effective, but it's also fun. However, I think we need to be very careful. Education is not the same as entertainment. And learning is hard, and it's a marathon sometimes.
Let me
it's a different one.
And putting a leaderboard on something, you know, for workplace learning.
just give me one point. The question that you ask students the most is, when is this torture gonna be over? When are you finished with learning?
Yeah,
And you don't ask that in Fortnite.
No.
that's true.
Right.
Point made.
Yeah.
Good point.
So any more free investment advice from this panel?
I mean, the factor of adaptability is something really important to look into, both for the educational institutes as well as for the students that are going into a more complex life, not just in terms of the workplace as well as the geopolitical issues that are going around and how they could build themselves up as themselves, rather than being monitored and controlled, swayed away with the technologies that are available, that are coming up as well.
Yeah, well said.
Okay.
I would also say, you know, George's word of caution or urgency that universities need to be AI first. I think entrepreneurs and growth stage companies have to have AI as part of their value proposition, or they just won't be taken seriously.
And it can't be a bolt-on.
No, it has to be legitimately defended. But I've had investors come to us and say, great asset, but they had no response to AI. They could have just had 2 pages on the back and sort of educated themselves on how it could tie into their platform down the line. But because they didn't, they were taken off the table.
Or sometimes, as you were saying before, Fernando, maybe the easiest way is just to tear it all down and start over. No. Okay, so we've got a few minutes for questions, I think. This gentleman here.
So I had a question, listening to all of you and what you said about universities. So we have a Center for Business Innovation that's educating people that need to understand AI. And the question is, we've had a couple of investors who've said, well, why don't you spin it off? Why don't you just spin off some of your university activities into companies that then can provide a service? We've been talking more about companies that provide services to universities, but potentially could universities spin off, or would you look at that and say, oh my God, the universities are coming from a different point of view? In other words, is that, you know, as you think about AI and investments, will that be an opportunity or an avenue?
Do you want to answer that?
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
I think
And that's already happening.
Right.
So I think there's no question. I think there was a lot of resistance to universities taking risks. Certainly that is the ecosystem of universities. Anything that challenges the central hub of the admissions, enrollment, revenue, you don't want to mess with it. what you're talking about is a version of innovation that actually makes a lot of financial sense and builds on that central engine of profitability. But there's already a few really good examples of universities doing that.
And I think there's another good reason, Bruce. If you don't allow this to happen, then universities will lose their skilled people.
Exactly.
Yeah, let me add one dimension. We built one brand new university in Mexico, and as opposed to having the university going to the industry, we have the industry inside the university, building new products and new models from within. So I think that is going to be more and more the common thread, is business is going to come to the university again.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had another question in the back, Nick?
Just a quick one. So first of all, I think all your insights were great. I'm Nick from Emerge. We're Europe's leading edtech, 86 investments. So
Yep.
two things. First of all, an invite. We've got 105 startups from the Spanish ecosystem coming here in addition to GEF this afternoon at 4:15. Emerge and SEC are doing a kind of an accelerator, meet the founder. 4:15 till 5 is some panels, 5 to 6 is free networking. And I'd love to see you all there because I know you'd love to meet startups, they'd love to get your advice. But the question I'd like to ask you guys is...
I love that shameless plug.
That was really well done.
It's part of GEF. It's just to make sure that they're not part of the conference. They're all coming here at 4 o'clock. So, all from the
But your
Spanish
question?
ecosystem. Perennial question on investors' minds and startups' minds is can AI create a moat? And whether investors are divided, but every founder I meet is trying to tell me how their use of AI is defensive and is a moat. What's
Can
your
you explain
perspective on that?
what a moat is for those of the audience that don't speak English as a first language?
Something that a moat is a concept that gives you, as a startup, something of defensibility that others can easily copy. So it gives you a competitive advantage. Do you think AI can be that, or is that a red herring? I'd love to know your perspective.
My perspective is I don't know. Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that I think we as a group are waiting to see, because you could see a lot of reasons why it's actually not possible to create a defensive position. But I'm sure there are smart people, much smarter than me, that would make the case that that's wrong.
I would have certain doubt, because I mean, you listened to EU regulation this morning. If you have to provide full transparency on your algorithm and everything, I mean, there will be somebody next door who is going to copy that.
Yeah, I personally, I know I'm moderating,
And maybe
I'm not
she
supposed to participate, but I really think that in some cases, yes. But I don't think any moat, full stop, is forever, right?
Right.
Moats dry
Buys you
eventually,
time, right.
But if you do come up with it's true intellectual property IP, you developed AI, I'm thinking, Mike, of our conversation yesterday around, some algorithms that are really game-changing when it comes to identifying mental health issues, for example. In that case, if you really are that much better than the competitors and it's going to take them that long to catch up, maybe yes. The question is, we don't know how big that window is.
I mean, just look at the example of OpenAI and Microsoft.
Exactly.
What they do to preserve their positioning.
Yeah.
So
Mike?
somebody will come in and buy that. Well, then maybe that's the
Yes,
goal
the
of
goal.
it.
That's right.
So yeah, thanks. So Mike Damiano, I'm a Emerge Venture Partner, advisor, angel investor in tech. And when I'm in groups like this or conferences like this with entrepreneurs and educationalists and financiers and technologists, we're always talking about the next new thing. And thank you for telling us where you put your money. I think it's useful. But where would you put your children?
Oh.
So if we think early childhood education, especially, we're always putting our money or our clients' money into risks. Has anybody got an example where they put their own children, or they would put their own children, into something that is alternative education in early childhood?
For me, it was a model. I listened to a podcast on the other day, and it was a charter school, which, again, the public entities are going to be the slowest to try new things or make change. So this was like a private charter school, and they were bringing things back to the Socratic method and using products like Khan Academy and some of these others to gamify learning, giving the students more agency in determining, they could choose how much they study, when, and if they accomplished a certain number of points, then they could choose the next week. If not, they had to go back to more of a traditional model until they got a specific thing done. And they were seeing tremendous results with that because the learning was fun. The students felt like they had control of their their day and their future, and that was building the kind of things that we're not building right now in the traditional model. So that's where I would want my children, so that because they're not too young to start learning those skills, and at that age, and it showed that they were 2 years ahead, like on standardized testing, compared to other students that were in a traditional model, even though they had the ability to determine how fast they were learning. So to me, that was a great use of technology, and that's because I always tell my children, the main reason I send them to school because I have a degree in education, so I could just teach them at home. They're there to learn the life skills and the interactions with other people, and those what it is to be human, how to read somebody else, how to really function in society, and so if we can get back to more of that versus just trying to fill their heads with information, that's what I'd be looking for.
I've got 2 teenagers, so the question of where I want to put them right now, I'm not going to give you an honest answer. But in terms of schools, honestly, I would take a huge risk if I could, and the problem is I can't because it's not available. And one of the reasons it's not available, I live here in Spain, is there's such a pressure from a curriculum standpoint that even the schools that want to innovate, they are so limited in what they can actually teach that at the end of the day, they're forced to be traditional. It's a real problem. And I think that's true of most.
I think that's
places
true
in the world,
in most of Europe, and we should
unless
not
you homeschool, but then you don't
forget
get
those
the social.
who
Right.
cannot have access.
I would like, it's a little difficult for me because I have my son in the room, but I think I would.
Where's the sun?
So, but the one thing that I would say is that you cannot outsource that to any school. So I think you need to complement, and the challenge for us is to design meaningful experiences that connect you with different cultures, with different areas, and find what is it that engages, and where is that person going to thrive. So I think that is a responsibility, not only to say the school it's only an X% or whatever.
Okay. I think that's a wrap. Thank you. Muchas
Thank you.
gracias por venir. Nos
Thank
vemos
you.
a las 4, Good job.